Alright guys, so before we get into the video, I just want to let you know that the first half of the video is going to be a picture of the main card while I'm making the predictions. If you want to see the gameplay footage, you can skip to around the 6-minute mark. It's going to be somewhere around there. I didn't expect to talk as much as I did about the first few fights, but I just thought I should let you guys know. So if you want to skip to the gameplay footage, it's going to be at around the 6-minute mark. But yeah, enjoy the video. Alright guys, so this Saturday, August 5th, we have a UFC Fight Night card down in Mexico City, Mexico, and I'm here to give you my predictions. Now, I'm only going to be breaking down the main card in this video. If you guys want to see the predictions for the entire card, you can look down in the description down below. All the picks will be there. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so for the first fight, we have a bantamweight bout between Alejandro Perez and Andre Soukhamthath. Alejandro Perez won the Ultimate Fighter Latin America back in 2014, has a record of 18-6, 8 knockouts, 6 submissions. You know, the last time he stepped into the octagon was a majority draw against Albert Morales. He's a solid striker, pretty good ground game. Andre Soukhamthath, on the other hand, also in his last fight, lost via split decision to Albert Morales. So it's a common opponent that they had in their last fight. Soukhamthath has a record of 11-4, 7 knockouts, 3 submissions. He's a really good boxer. He's a taller, longer fighter than Perez is. I do expect him to use his reach, but I just think that Alejandro Perez boxing and striking is way too crisp. He has really fast hands. I expect him to get on the inside, close the distance, and come away with the unanimous decision victory. Next up, we have a middleweight bout between Sam Alvey and Sugar Rashad Evans. Sam Alvey currently has a record of 30-9. He's 7-4 in the UFC. He was on a 4-fight win streak before stepping into his last fight where he lost to Tyles Leites. You know, he's a pretty good boxer, a really strong wrestler, an experienced guy in the octagon, and so is Sugar Rashad Evans. Rashad Evans, you know, this is a guy that was a former champion in the light heavyweight division. You know, he beaten guys like Forrest Griffin, Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell. He had actually beat Forrest Griffin for the light heavyweight championship, then lost his belt to Lyoto Machida. Won a few fights after that before getting another shot at then champion and current champion John Bones Jones. Came up short. So he's just on the way out. He recently made the move down to middleweight, made his UFC debut against Daniel Kelly where he came up short. So I just think he's on the way out. He's a shell of himself. He's a pretty good boxer, a pretty solid wrestler himself, but I just think that he really has nothing else to give. And I think Sam Alvey is going to land some pretty good combinations on the feet and just be... He's going to be the aggressor, and I think he does come away with the TKO victory in the second round. Alright, so for the next bout, we have a featherweight matchup between the undefeated Martin Bravo and Humberto Bandenay. Martin Bravo, like I said, he's undefeated. He has 5 knockouts, 5 submissions, a really good boxer, a really strong wrestler, really good takedown defense, and solid jiu-jitsu. On the other hand, we have Humberto Bandenay, who has a record of 13-4, currently on a 5-fight win streak. This is going to be his UFC debut. You know, throughout his career, he's racked up 6 first-round finishers. He's really strong, and he's really tall for the division. He's 5 inches taller than Martin Bravo. I think he's 6'1", so that's really tall for a featherweight. Really good Muay Thai, excellent body kicks and leg kicks. And I think he's going to pose some challenges to Martin Bravo. Like I said, he's the bigger, longer fighter. He's younger. He looks way stronger than Martin Bravo. But he is flat-footed. He does have a tendency to be flat-footed at times. And I think Martin Bravo will capitalize on that. I think he'll utilize his footwork. He'll be able to get inside, land combinations, and just outbox Humberto Bandenay. Now, I do think Bandenay does have a legitimate shot to land a clean kick or a clean shot on Martin Bravo. I just don't think it'll happen. I think he's way too experienced, way too polished. And I think Martin Bravo will get the job done and come away with the unanimous decision victory. Now, next up, we have a bout between Alan Jouban and Nico Price. Alan Jouban currently has a record of 15-5, 10 knockouts. He made his UFC debut back in 2014. Currently has a record of 6-3 in the UFC. He's 3-1 in his last 4 fights. The last time he stepped into the octagon, he stepped in there with Gunnar Nelson. Lost that fight via submission. He was wobbled on the feet badly and then put away, as I just said, on the ground by Gunnar Nelson. But he's a good striker. Really good kicks. Excellent technique and precision. Very precise with his strikes. And he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so he can definitely hold his own on the ground. He's going up against Nico Price, who currently has a record of 9-0, currently undefeated, 6 knockouts, 2 submission victories. He made his UFC debut back in 2016, where he sealed a submission victory over Brandon Thatch. The last time he stepped into the octagon, he knocked out Alex Morano. Later on, that victory was overturned. after drug testing discovered weed in his system. But Nico Price is a really good striker, just like Alan Jouban. He has really good power in his hands, pretty elusive on the feet, and he has an ever-improving ground game, as we saw in his submission victory over Brandon Thatch. Now, I think this is a fight that, because they're both really good strikers, it's going to come down to who's going to be the aggressor, who's going to push the pace, who's going to push forward. And I do see that fighter being Nico Price. I do see him using his reach advantage, because he does have a slight reach advantage over Alan Jouban, keeping the distance and barely outstriking Alan Jouban, because I do think it's going to be a really competitive fight. I do see it going the distance because they're both really good strikers. And I do see this fight being a split decision victory with Nico Price coming out on top. And now for the co-main event of the evening, we have a women's strawweight bout between Alexa Grasso and Ronda Marcos. Alexa Grasso currently has a record of 9-1, 4 knockouts. She made her UFC debut in Mexico City on the Rafael Dos Anjos and Tony Ferguson card. She beat Heather Jo Clark via unanimous decision. Now, the last time she stepped into the octagon, she fought Felice Herrig, which was a very competitive fight, a very close fight. Herrig was awarded the unanimous decision victory. Alexa Grasso is a really good striker. She's really polished on the feet. She's a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but she does not do well under pressure. Now she's currently going up against Ronda Marcos, who currently has a record of 7-5, has a record of 3-3 in the UFC. Now, it's kind of funny because she wins a fight and then she loses a fight. Never has she won 2 in a row, and never has she lost 2 in a row. Now, the last time she stepped into the octagon, she came out on top in a match against Carla Esparza. She has pretty good striking, but she's a strong grappler, and she's really good on the ground. So I do see her trying to get Alexa Grasso to the ground, doing everything in her power to keep her down and just hold her down for 3 rounds. But I think that if Alexa Grasso does a good job of stuffing those takedowns, of keeping it on the feet, she's going to use her reach. Because she's clearly the better striker than Marcos. And because of that, I do see her pinpointing Marcos for 3 rounds and coming away with a unanimous decision victory. And now for the main event of the evening, a flyweight bout between the number 7th ranked flyweight in the world, Brandon Moreno, and the 6th ranked flyweight in the world, Sergio Pettis. Now, Brandon Moreno currently has a record of 14-3, only 1 knockout, 10 submission victories. All of his 3 losses come by decision. He's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He started his career with a record of 3-3, and since then has won 11 straight. He's currently 3-0 in the UFC. Now, Brandon Moreno is such an inspiring story because of the success that he's having right now. I mean, this is a guy that was on the Ultimate Fighter season Tournament of Champions back in 2016, where he lost his first fight via submission in the 2nd round to Alejandro Pantoja. Because of that, he was eliminated from the show. And while the show was still airing, he made his UFC debut against the then, I believe, number 9 ranked flyweight, Luis Smolka, where he absolutely shocked the world with a beautiful guillotine victory, submission victory. And since then, he's just been on a run. His next fight was against Ryan Benoit, which was a very close fight, very competitive fight, where Brandon Moreno was awarded the split decision victory. And in his last fight against Dustin Ortiz, who is a really strong wrestler and really did have success in getting Moreno to the ground, Moreno showed poise, he stayed calm until they were back on the feet in the 2nd round, where he landed a clean head kick to the head of Dustin Ortiz, absolutely wobbled him, and then eventually sunk in a rear naked choke. Now, Brandon Moreno has really fast hands, excellent footwork, is really explosive, and don't let the 1 knockout fool you. He has really solid power in his hands. I think he just needs to trust in his striking more, in his boxing more. But he can be very creative. I mean, he is really good at throwing a variety of different combinations. He's very smart, and he has tremendous heart, a tremendous will to win. But there are times where he can be a bit too wild, and I think he just needs to do a better job of pacing himself. Now, in this fight, he's going up against Sergio Pettis. Sergio Pettis currently has a record of 15-2, 3 knockouts, 3 submission victories. The rest of his fights come by decision. He's a black belt in Taekwondo, a black belt in Rufus Sport Kickboxing. He's a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just like Brandon Moreno. He made his UFC debut actually at Bantamweight. At Bantamweight, he was 3-1 before he eventually moved back to Flyweight. In 2015, he lost his Flyweight return to Ryan Benoit. But since then, he has piled on 3 straight victories. The last time he stepped into the octagon, he came away with a unanimous decision victory over John Moraga. He's a really good striker, a really strong grappler, pretty good ground game. He's usually smart and composed. Now, the only thing I think that Sergio Pettis lacks is power in his hands. I think he is very conservative. He tends to stay disciplined, but I think a bit too disciplined. Now, he does have a lack of finishes, as I said. He has 15 wins in his career. 9 of those are decision victories. And what I've noticed in his past fights, for example, the fight with Ryan Benoit, he's not too good under pressure. Now, there's definitely room to grow. I mean, both of these guys are only 23 years old, and both of these guys are looking to solidify themselves as a legit contender in the flyweight division and maybe eventually challenge current champion Demetrious Johnson for that belt. But I do think this is going to be a really good fight. I think it's going to be a really scrappy bout between these two guys. Both are looking to make a name for themselves in this division. And it's funny because if you look at the rankings, Sergio Pettis is number 6. Brandon Moreno is number 7. But this truly is a number 1 contender fight. And the reason why I say this is because Demetrious Johnson has just dominated almost everyone that he's faced in that division. I mean, if you look at the top contenders, Wilson Hayes, Henry Cejudo, Joseph Benavidez. The second fight with Joseph Benavidez, Demetrious Johnson beat him decisively. With Henry Cejudo, he knocked him out in the first round. DJ was able to outclass Wilson Hayes as he does almost everyone. And DJ has a scheduled fight with Ray Borg, so it may very well be that the winner of this fight is next in line for a title shot. But like I said, it's going to be a really good fight, and I think it's going to come down to who sets the pace and who paces themselves better, because we all know, as I said, Brandon Moreno can be a bit too wild, and on the other hand, Sergio Pettis can be a bit too conservative. Now, I said that Sergio Pettis lacks power in his hands. Now, that may not necessarily be the case. I just don't think he lets himself loose enough. I think he obviously has the tools to be able to finish fights. I just don't think that he takes risks. Now, the important thing is taking risks without necessarily putting yourself in obvious danger. And against this fight with Brandon Moreno, Sergio Pettis is going to have to take risk, because you're going to have to put Brandon Moreno away, because Brandon Moreno has tremendous heart and he'll find a way to win. So I think Sergio Pettis' best shot to win this fight is on the feet. Now, that's not taking anything away from his grappling abilities, because Sergio Pettis is a strong grappler, and I do think he can get Brandon Moreno to the ground. But Brandon Moreno is just so dangerous off his back. Even his guard is dangerous, as we saw against Luis Smoker, where he was able to sink in that guillotine. Now, Brandon Moreno is always pushing forward, and he's willing to exchange. So I do think that for the first few rounds, they're going to be on the feet. They're going to throw a few combinations. They're going to see a few exciting exchanges. But I just don't think Sergio Pettis has what it takes to beat a guy like Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno has the ability to hurt you on the feet, and I do think that he will hurt Sergio Pettis. I do see, like I said, being a competitive fight for rounds 1, round 2, and I do see Brandon Moreno landing a head kick as he did with Dustin Ortiz in the 3rd round. He's going to wobble Sergio Pettis. Sergio Pettis is going to shoot a weak takedown, and Brandon Moreno is going to sink in the submission and come away with a submission victory in the 3rd round. Now, if you like these predictions, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Thanks, guys.